Welcome, creative adventurers. I'm Dkohn with Dkohn Designs. I'm so glad you stopped by today. It's week 3 of the Ukraine Always Quilt Along. In this week's video, I'll give you some tips on how to square up your quilt and to finish it. As you can see behind me, I've finished the quilt top. This week's finishing pattern will be available on my website at dkohndesigns.com. You can also download week 1's pattern for block 1 and week 2's pattern for block 2 if you missed them. Just go to my website at dkohndesigns.com, go to the free patterns tab, and it will be available for you to download. This pattern will be available. This is for the 60 by 60 inch quilt. I will be consolidating the instructions and adding directions for additional sizes, including wall hangings, in the near future, and that pattern will be for sale on my website. But the 60 by 60 lap quilt pattern will be free. It is my hope with this quilt along that you will consider donating $12 to the charity of your choice that is assisting Ukrainians and Ukrainian refugees in this terrible time of war and crisis. A quick note about why I named it Ukraine Always. As you can see from the design of the quilt, that the Ukrainian flag begins in block 1, up there, and it goes through the quilt all the way to the last block of the bottom row. I had in mind that the flags would represent the sovereign country of Ukraine, first, last, and always. And then also the Rolling Stone block reminds me of sunflowers, which of course is the national flower of Ukraine. So that's why I named it Ukraine Always. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, tell a friend, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's the best way you can support my channel. Then head on over to my blog at dkohndesigns.com, and you can look in the free patterns tab for that one and other quilting inspiration and free patterns. Thank you again. I hope you'll consider making this and donating to the charity of your choice to support Ukraine and Ukrainians in need. So let's talk about finishing up the quilt. One tip I have is that I suggest you wait to square up your blocks until the end, especially if you are a beginning quilter or the block or pattern is new to you. That way, if there is a significant error in 2 or 3 or more of your blocks, and you either can't remake it because you don't have enough fabric, or you don't want to because your block has 29 pieces like this Rolling Stone block does, then you can trim all the blocks to the same size. In this quilt, as long as the blocks are the same size, it will be okay. You will want to keep in mind the design of the block. Trimming this block, the Ukrainian flag block down, will not be an issue at all. It will look the same no matter which way, no matter what size you cut it down to. However, on the Rolling Stone block, if you trim it down, say 1/4 of an inch, you'll just need to be aware that you may cut the points off on your diamonds. Cut your blocks, all the blocks in the entire quilt down that 1/4 of an inch that you need to do. Call it a design choice and move on. For squaring up your blocks for this quilt, the tools you'll need, of course, are your mat and your rotary cutter. If you happen to have a 12.5 by 12.5 inch ruler, like I do, this is an OmniGrid ruler, it will be helpful, but it is not required. I'll show you how to square up your blocks both ways. First, I'm going to show you how to do it using a ruler. I recommend, as I mentioned, that you move your mat to the corner of a table if you're able to, or the corner of a counter. That will make it easier to trim all the way around the block without having to pick the block up and flip it. So if you have a 12 by 12 ruler, you lay it down. You want to match the lines on your mat with the lines in your block. Do it the best that you can. I'm lining mine up along here like this. I'm also lining it up going crossways like this. Now, if you see that you have some extra on one side and not enough on the other side, scoot your ruler over. If you notice you have a couple spots where your seam wasn't quite accurate, then split the difference of the space on both sides of the block to keep it even. I'm going to start on this side, cutting around, holding the ruler firmly, walking around the corner of my table, slicing again, one more time, holding very firmly, especially when you're going on this side. When you're going across, be sure you don't tilt your rotary cutter in or out. Hold it straight up and press down firmly. And then the last one, if you need to readjust your ruler, just match it up one more time. And then come around to the other side of the table, going this direction, and cut. And there you have it, squaring it up using a 12.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. Okay, what if you don't have the handy dandy ruler? Can you do it using just your mat? Absolutely. Let me show you how. One of the things I recommend is you use a piece of tape. This happens to be removable, repositionable Scotch tape, but you could use washi tape or even just any painter's tape would work. And mark the corner of your mat so you don't have to keep searching for it when you've got 20 blocks to trim. It's just a lot easier. So I'm going to mark it at the I'm going to mark right here at my 12-inch mark. I'm going to call that 12 inches just so I can see the line right there. And then right here in this corner. That way I can always look quickly and easily. So I can see I'm going to line up my block here at the 12 inches. Smooth it over. And I look on this side at the 12.5. Is it a tiny bit short? Is it even? Or is it over? It looks like it's almost exactly right on. If it's a little bit one side or the other, then you need to adjust it so you split the difference between both sides of the block. So this looks good. I'm going to use a ruler and I'm going to trim this side. Got my ruler on the 12.5 inches over and cut. I check my top and bottom, and it looks like I need to scoot it down just a hair. There we go. Put my ruler right on the line, which I can see. Trim. You can also come around on this side because you set your mat on the corner. Line it up carefully. Press down firmly, and making sure your rotary cutter is straight up, not angled in or out. Press firmly and slice. Last but not least is the bottom. I come around on this side. I don't have to flip the block because my mat is on this corner of the table. I don't need to flip my block, and this speeds up time. I'm lining it up right at the 12.5 mark. Press down firmly and slice. I've trimmed a block without using any specialty rulers. You'll just do the same thing for each of your blocks. Now that I've squared my blocks, I put row 1 up on my makeshift design wall. The row is a little bit curved because I've actually just tacked up some batting over my kitchen cabinets, hung them down, and the curve is from the hood of the stove. It's a makeshift design wall and it works for me. If you'd like other ideas for design boards and design walls, Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts just came out with a wonderful video giving suggestions for 7 types of design wall and design board ideas that would suit most any budget or space. So here you can see that in row 1, the Ukrainian flag block is block number 1, followed by 4 rolling stone blocks. I'll put a picture up of the entire quilt. As you'll see, the Ukrainian flag rotates its position across the quilt. In row 1, it's block 1. In row 2, the flag is block 2. In row 3, the flag is block 3. In row 4, the flag is block 4. And in row 5, the flag is block 5. All of the other blocks in that particular row will be the rolling stone blocks. So let's go ahead and sew our row together. We will join the blocks with a 1/4 inch seam, right sides together. Here I'm sewing a Ukrainian flag block and a rolling stone block together. Right there. I'm just pinning at a couple of places at the beginning, the one seam and the end. I'm not too worried about pinning every few inches on this particular one. When joining the rolling stone blocks together, I like to use pins at least 2 or 3 per section. That way I'll ensure it's accurate. You'll want to check as you near the diamond point intersections. Try to sew just to the outside of it so you don't cut your points off. Then you repeat to join all of the blocks and all of the rows. I'd like to give you a couple of pressing tips. After you've sewn a row of blocks together, you want to notice the position of the row in the quilt. Row 1 seams you'll want to press to the right, all the seams joining the blocks to the right. Row 2, press all the seams to the left. Row 3 to the right. Row 4 to the left, and row 5 to the right. That way, when it comes to joining the rows, you'll be able to nest the seams easily, and then the quilt will come together quickly and without fuss. When you're joining the rows of the quilts together, row 1 to row 2, row 2 to row 3, and so on, I suggest that you press all of the seams going upward. That seems to be the natural way that the quilt blocks want to go. That'll make it quick and easy to press. A couple of notes about finishing my quilt. As you can see, the quilt top is put together. I will be adding a scrappy blue and yellow binding to my quilt. I have some backing fabric picked out as well. I did not add a border, but you may wish to. I just chose to keep this particular layout as simple and easy as possible. If I were to make the quilt again, I probably would add sashing between the blocks and a border around the quilt. Probably in the next one I will. And that's the Ukraine Always quilt. Thank you for joining me for these 3 weeks of the quilt along. If you missed any of it, just go back to my YouTube videos for the overview, week 1 and week 2. I'll leave that in a playlist at the end of the video. Again, the free pattern is available on my website, and I will have a complete pattern which sizes for baby, crib, lap, twin, queen, and king, as well as wall hangings in a paid pattern to be released in the near future. When I release that pattern, I'll announce it in a YouTube video and on my blog, and I will show you the completed quilted quilt. Thank you for watching. See you next time.